Commander Han Wu gripped the armrest of his command chair as another wave of bad news hit the bridge. The holographic display showed 3 more red dots disappearing from the galaxy map. 3 more human settlements wiped out in the past week. The Vorthak weren't just conquering anymore, they were erasing humanity from existence. Casualties, he asked, though he already dreaded the answer. New Shanghai colony, 6 million dead. Port Harmony, 4 million. The mining station at Beta. Centauri. Everyone gone, sir. Lieutenant Yuna's voice cracked as she read the reports. She was barely 25, fresh out of the academy. This wasn't the future she'd signed up for. Han Wu stood up and walked to the massive viewport. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions, but each one felt cold now. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak war machines were hunting down every human they could find. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, their technology centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed. "Sir, incoming transmission," called out Communications Officer Teho from his station. This is weird. It's coming from multiple sources across the galaxy, but they're all originating from the same location." "Put it through," Han Wu ordered. Static filled the bridge speakers, then a low humming sound that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull itself. The sound was ancient, powerful, like the heartbeat of something vast and sleeping. "Where's it coming from?" Han Wu demanded. Teho checked his instruments twice before answering. "The Sol system, sir." The bridge fell silent. Han Wu felt his blood run cold. "That's impossible. Sol is just a story, a myth about where humans supposedly came from before we spread across the galaxy." "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from that region. Something big is happening out there." Lieutenant Yuna looked up from her console, her face pale. "Commander, I'm picking up similar transmissions from other human ships. Everyone's getting this signal. What if Sol is real?" Meanwhile, millions of light years away, Dr. Minho was having the worst day of his scientific career. The coffee in his mug was vibrating so hard, it looked like it was boiling. His computer screens were flashing warning messages faster than he could read them. Every seismic sensor on the planet was screaming that something massive was moving. "Beneath the ocean floor. This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his thick glasses and staring at the readings. According to his instruments, something the size of Manhattan was rising from the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean. But that was impossible. He'd been studying Earth's geology for 15 years. There was nothing down there except rock and water. His research partner, Dr. Hee-won, burst through the laboratory door with her tablet in hand. "Minho, are you seeing this? The ocean temperature just jumped 20 degrees in a perfect circle about 500 kilometers wide." "The thermal readings are off the charts," Minho replied, pulling up satellite imagery on the main screen. "Look at this wave pattern. It's like something enormous is pushing up from below." Outside their research station, the few thousand humans who still lived on Earth stopped what they were doing and looked toward the ocean. The water was glowing, not the soft blue of bioluminescent plankton, but a deep, pulsing light that seemed to come from somewhere impossibly far below. Old Man Park, who ran the fishing village on the coast, had never seen anything like it in his 70 years of life. "My grandfather used to tell stories," he whispered to his daughter Su Jin. "Stories about something that slept beneath the waves, something that watched over us." The first thing to break the surface wasn't metal or stone. It was alive. Massive. Tentacles, each one thicker than a subway tunnel, emerged from the glowing water, but these weren't the tentacles of any sea creature. They were covered in what looked like armor, but armor that moved and shifted like living skin. Patterns of light raced along their surface, pulsing in rhythm with some ancient heartbeat. Dr. Minho's hands shook as he watched the live satellite. "Feed." "It's biomechanical," he breathed. "Part machine, part living organism. How is this possible?" More of the creature emerged. What they had thought was a hull was actually a shell, curved and organic like a massive sea turtle but covered in technology that humanity couldn't even begin to understand. The thing was the size of a small city, and it was still rising. As it fully emerged from the depths, the ocean around it didn't splash or foam. Instead, the water seemed to support it, holding it gently, like a mother cradling her child. The Guardian had awakened after 10,000 years of sleep, and its first sensation was pain. the pain of its children scattered across the galaxy, crying out in fear and desperation. Through quantum networks older than human civilization, it felt every human death, every burning colony, every desperate last stand against the Vorthak invasion. And deep within its ancient consciousness, something that had been patient for millennia finally stirred to anger. The Guardian's surface began to glow brighter, and every human on Earth felt something they hadn't felt in years. Hope, Captain Ji-un, had commanded Terra Base for 3 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The entire research station shook like a toy in an earthquake as the Guardian broke free from the ocean depths. Coffee cups flew off tables, computers sparked, and several scientists were thrown to the floor as the massive entity fully emerged. "Emergency stations, everyone!" Ji-un shouted over the facility's blaring alarms. She grabbed the nearest comm microphone with steady hands, even though her heart was racing. "This is Captain Ji-un to all Terra Base personnel. We have a massive unknown entity emerging from the Pacific Ocean. I repeat, this is not a drill." Through the reinforced windows of the command center, she could see the impossible sight. The Guardian was easily the size of Earth's moon, its biomechanical surface gleaming in the sunlight. Parts of it looked like the hull of a spaceship, covered in geometric patterns and glowing conduits. Other sections were clearly organic, with what looked like breathing vents and flowing muscle-like structures that rippled with movement. "Captain, the energy readings are off every scale we have," reported Chief Science Officer Wu Jin, his voice shaking with excitement and terror. "Whatever this thing is, it's generating more power than our entire solar grid." Ji-un activated the base-wide communication system. "All research teams, maintain your positions and gather as much data as possible. This could be the most important discovery in human history." Thousands of light-years away, in the command center of the Vorthak flagship, Death's Herald, War Commander Thex was dealing with his own crisis. His reptilian features twisted into a frown as he studied the holographic reports floating before him. The Vorthak were an ancient species, proud conquerors who had dominated this galaxy for over 5,000 years. They had crushed dozens of civilizations, but something about these energy readings made his scales tingle with unease. "Show me these readings again," Thex hissed to his intelligence officer. "Sir, our deep space sensors detected massive quantum disturbances in the third arm of the galaxy. The energy signature is coming from the system humans call Sol, their supposed origin world." Thex's eyes narrowed. Like most Vorthak commanders, he knew human history better than most humans did. Earth was supposed to be a dead world, abandoned, long ago when humans spread across the stars, but these energy readings suggested something enormous and powerful was awakening there. "Prepare the 10th Fleet," he ordered. "I want to know what the humans are hiding." Back on Earth, the Guardian's consciousness was expanding for the first time in 10 millennia. Its vast mind, a fusion of advanced artificial intelligence and organic neural networks, began to reconnect with the quantum communication web it had built eons ago. Through this network, it could sense every human settlement across the galaxy. The pain hit it like a physical blow. Burning colonies, screaming families, children running from Vorthak war machines. The Guardian felt each death as if it were losing a part of itself. These weren't just random humans, they were its children, descendants of the people it had sworn to protect before entering its long sleep. Ancient combat protocols, dormant for centuries, began to activate. Weapon systems that had been sleeping in the Guardian's depths started to hum with power. Biomechanical factories within its body began producing nanobots and energy cells. The Guardian was preparing for war. Young engineer Dae Jin pressed his face against the observation deck window, watching in amazement as patterns of light began racing across the Guardian's hull. He was only 22, fresh out of engineering school, and had volunteered for Earth duty because he thought it would be quiet and boring. Now he was witnessing something that would change the course of human history. "Look at those patterns," he whispered to his colleague. "They're not random, it's like it's thinking." The lights moved in complex spirals and geometric shapes, pulsing in rhythm with some vast heartbeat. Sections of the Guardian's hull opened to reveal scanning arrays and sensor clusters that extended like metallic flowers blooming in fast motion. Each scanner was the size of a building, and there were hundreds of them. "It's learning about us," realized Dr. Yunji, wiping tears from her eyes. The elderly xenobiologist had spent her entire career studying the possibility of intelligent alien life. She never expected to find it sleeping beneath Earth's oceans. All these years, we thought we were alone, but it was here, watching over us. The Guardian's scans went far beyond Earth. Its sensors reached out across space, mapping human colonies, analyzing Vorthak ship designs, studying weapon signatures from recent battles. In seconds, it processed more tactical information than human military computers could handle in years. Then it began to speak. The message didn't come through radio waves or standard communication channels. Instead, it was transmitted directly through the quantum network, reaching every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. But the strangest part was the language it chose. "Wait," gasped Communications Officer Tae-ho at Terra Base. "It's not speaking. Human languages. That's Vorthak military code." The Guardian's voice was deep and resonant, like the sound of continents shifting. In perfect, ancient Vorthak dialect, it delivered its ultimatum. "The children of Earth are under my protection. Withdraw from all human territories immediately, or face the consequences of awakening something that should have remained asleep." The message reached every Vorthak ship in the galaxy at the same moment. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's most feared conquerors felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. The Vorthak 10th Fleet consisted of 300 warships, each one a masterpiece of destruction that had conquered dozens of worlds. War Commander Thex stood on the bridge of his flagship Bone Crusher, confident that whatever primitive defense the humans had mustered would crumble within minutes. The Vorthak had perfected the art of war over 5 millennia. No species had ever stood against them for long. "Hyperspace jump complete, Commander," reported his navigation officer. "We have arrived at the human origin system." Thex's reptilian eyes widened as the view screen activated. Instead of a small, defenseless planet, they found themselves facing something that made his ancient warrior's heart skip a beat. The Guardian hung in space like a living moon, its biomechanical surface pulsing with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. "What in the name of the dark gods is that thing?" gasped Sub-Commander Krex, his clawed hands shaking as he tried to operate his sensor console. "Sir, my instruments can't get a proper reading. It's like the entity is existing in multiple dimensions at once." The Guardian was unlike anything in Vorthak military databases. Parts of it looked like a massive spaceship, with weapon ports and armor plating that gleamed like polished metal. But other sections were clearly alive, breathing and moving like the organs of some cosmic beast. Tentacles the size of skyscrapers swayed gently around its main body, each one crackling with energy. "All ships, battle formation," Thex commanded, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Prepare to engage the enemy." But the Guardian didn't move to attack. Instead, it simply watched them with sensors that unfolded like mechanical flowers across its hull. Each sensor array was easily the size of a Vorthak battleship, and there were thousands of them. The Guardian was studying the Vorthak fleet like a scientist, examining insects under a microscope. In those few seconds of observation, the Guardian learned everything. It analyzed their ship designs, mapped their weapon systems, studied their shield frequencies, and even decoded their communication protocols. To the Guardian's ancient mind, Vorthak technology was primitive and predictable. "Commander, it's scanning us," Krex reported in panic. "Our shields are useless against these sensors. It's reading our entire database." Then the Guardian acted. It didn't fire weapons or launch missiles. Instead, reality around the Vorthak fleet simply changed. Space twisted, time bent, and the fundamental forces that held matter together were rewritten according to the Guardian's will. One moment, 300 Vorthak warships filled the space around Sol. The next moment, they were gone, not destroyed, not exploded into debris. Just gone, as if they had never existed at all. Commander Hanwoo aboard the New Horizon was monitoring long-range sensors when the impossible readings appeared on his screen. "Navigation, are you seeing this?" he called out to his bridge crew. "Sir, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from the Sol system," reported Navigator Youngsu. "It looks like a major space battle just started." Hanwoo leaned forward in his command chair. If the legends were true, if Earth really existed, then maybe humanity finally had a chance against the Vorthak. "How long until we get detailed readings?" "The quantum sensors should give us data in about 30 seconds, sir." Those 30 seconds felt like hours. Every human on the bridge held their breath, hoping against hope that their mysterious guardian was real and powerful enough to fight back against their enemies. When the readings came through, Han Wu's jaw dropped. "The Vorthak fleet, they're just gone. No debris, no energy signatures from weapon impacts, just gone." "Sir, incoming transmission on all human frequencies," reported Communications Officer Yuna. "It's coming from Earth." The voice that filled the bridge was deep and ancient, speaking in perfect human language, but with an accent that seemed to come from the dawn of time. "Children of Earth, your guardian has returned. The hunt begins now." The message reached every human settlement across the galaxy simultaneously. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Foreman Jinho was supervising the night shift when the transmission came through the emergency broadcast system. He'd been born on Kepler, as had his parents and grandparents. Earth was just a story to him, a myth about humanity's supposed birthworld. But as he listened to the Guardian's voice, something deep in his genetic memory stirred. This was the voice of home, of protection, of a parent who had finally come to rescue their lost children. "Did you hear that?" he asked his mining crew, tears running down his dirt-stained face. "Earth is real, and it's fighting for us." On the agricultural world of Proxima Gardens, Administrator Hae-jin gathered the colonists in the main square. The farming community had lived in fear for months, knowing that Vorthak raiders could appear at any moment to destroy their peaceful world. "Listen to me, everyone," she announced to the crowd of worried families. "I just received confirmation from Fleet Command. The transmission is real. Earth exists, and something called the Guardian just destroyed an entire Vorthak war fleet." The crowd erupted in cheers and tears. Children who had grown up hearing bedtime stories about the mysterious world called Earth now knew those stories were true. But the reaction wasn't limited to humans. Deep in Vorthak space, the Supreme Council convened in emergency session. The 12 most powerful Vorthak lords gathered in their pyramid-shaped council chamber, their reptilian faces showing an emotion they hadn't felt in centuries: fear. "The 10th Fleet is gone," announced Supreme Warlord Vex, his voice echoing through the chamber. 300 ships, our most advanced weapons, our finest warriors, eliminated in seconds." "What of War Commander Thex?" asked another council member. His last transmission was a single word: impossible. The council fell silent. In 5,000 years of conquest, they had never lost an entire fleet without explanation. Whatever the humans had awakened, it was beyond their understanding and possibly beyond their ability to defeat. The Guardian had no intention of waiting for the Vorthak to recover from their shock. While the Supreme Council debated and panicked, the ancient protector was already moving. But it didn't travel through space like ordinary ships. Instead, it folded reality around itself, stepping through dimensions that most species couldn't even imagine existed. Zerion Prime was the crown jewel of Vorthak military might, a fortress world surrounded by 300 orbital defense platforms and protected by energy shields that could withstand the explosion of a star. It was here that the Vorthak built their most powerful warships and trained their deadliest warriors. Chief Scientist Vex was studying quantum physics equations in his laboratory when every instrument in the facility began screaming warnings. The elderly Vorthak's scales turned pale as he watched his readings spike beyond anything he'd ever seen. "Base Commander! Base Commander!" he shouted into his communicator. "We're detecting massive space-time distortions directly above the planet. Something is tearing holes in reality itself." Above Zerion Prime, space began to twist and bend like heated metal. Stars shifted position, light bent at impossible angles, and then, with a sound that seemed to come from the universe itself groaning, the Guardian emerged from folded space. The orbital defense platforms immediately opened fire, launching enough energy to vaporize a small moon. But their weapons passed harmlessly through the Guardian as if it existed in a different layer of reality. The ancient entity hung in space like a living nightmare, its biomechanical surface rippling with power that made the laws of physics seem like mere suggestions. "All ships, attack formation!" screamed Base Commander Thok from his command center. "Deploy everything we have." The Vorthak fleet at Zerion Prime consisted of 500 of their most advanced warships, including several planet killers that had never been defeated in battle. They swarmed toward the Guardian like angry wasps, their weapons blazing. The Guardian's response was swift and terrifying. Instead of firing back with conventional weapons, it reached out with tendrils of pure energy that passed through Vorthak, shields as if they weren't there. When these tendrils touched the enemy ships, something impossible happened. The Vorthak battleships didn't explode. They didn't burn or break apart. Instead, they simply stopped being warships. At the quantum level, the Guardian rewrote their molecular structure, converting metal and electronics into harmless particles that scattered like glowing dust across space. "Sir, the Vorthak ships, they're just dissolving," gasped the communications officer aboard a human refugee ship that was monitoring the battle from a safe distance. "It's like they're being erased from existence." Within minutes, the entire Vorthak fleet was gone, but the Guardian wasn't finished. It turned its attention to Zerion Prime itself and began to write a message across the planet's surface, not with weapons or bombs, but by rearranging the very atoms of the ground below. From orbit, the message was clearly visible in letters hundreds of kilometers tall. "Earth remembers." The words glowed with energy that would last for thousands of years, a permanent reminder to any Vorthak who survived that humanity's protector had returned. Back on Earth, Dr. Minho had barely slept in 3 days. He was working around the clock to understand the Guardian's technology, analyzing energy readings and quantum signatures that defied everything he knew about science. "Captain Jiun, you need to see this," he said over the comm system, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "I've been studying the Guardian's biosignatures, and what I'm finding is incredible." Jiun arrived at his laboratory to find Minho surrounded by holographic displays showing complex DNA sequences and neural network patterns. "It's not just artificial intelligence," Minho explained, pointing to the swirling data. "Part of it is genuinely alive. The Guardian has been evolving for thousands of years, learning and growing while it slept beneath our oceans." "Evolving how?" Jiun asked, though she wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. "It's part machine, part biological organism, and part something else entirely. Something that exists in dimensions we can't even perceive. No wonder the Vorthak can't fight it. It's not just more advanced than them, it's operating on completely different laws of reality." While Earth scientists struggled to understand their protector, humans across the galaxy were discovering that the Guardian's protection extended far beyond destroying enemy fleets. On the trading post of Haven Station, Merchant Captain Sung Min was checking his ship's cargo hold when he found something that shouldn't have been there. Crates of advanced technology had simply materialized overnight, appearing without any record of how they'd arrived. "So Young, come look at this," he called to his maintenance chief. "These weapons systems, I've never seen anything like them." So Young ran her scanner over the mysterious equipment and frowned at the readings. "The quantum signature says these came from Earth. Captain, our Guardian isn't just hunting the Vorthak, it's taking care of us." Similar discoveries were happening on human colonies across the galaxy. Shield generators that could deflect planet-killer weapons appeared in colonial defense centers. Medical supplies that could cure diseases thought incurable materialized in hospitals. Farmers found seeds for crops that could grow in impossible conditions. The Guardian was protecting its children in every way it could, but the Vorthak weren't sitting still. As news of Zerion Prime's fall spread through their empire, panic began to set in. Entire fleets abandoned their positions in human space and retreated to their core worlds, hoping distance would protect them from this impossible enemy. They were wrong. The Guardian had spent its first few active days mapping the entire Vorthak Empire, identifying every military installation, every fleet position, every weapon stockpile. Now it began to hunt them systematically, appearing without warning at their strongest fortresses and most secret bases. No matter where the Vorthak ran, no matter how they tried to hide, the Guardian found them. It could track them through hyperspace, follow them through dimensional portals, and even predict where they would flee next. The ancient protector had become the ultimate predator, and the galaxy's former masters had become its prey. Vorthak Prime had stood unconquered for 8,000 years. The massive world at the heart of the Vorthak Empire was protected by 5 orbital rings of defense stations, each one capable of destroying entire solar systems. Millions of warships patrolled its space lanes, and the planet's surface was covered with weapons that could crack moons in half. Supreme War Commander Zith stood in the central command chamber, his ancient reptilian form trembling with rage and fear. In his 3 centuries of life, he had never seen the Vorthak Empire retreat from anything. But this Guardian had systematically destroyed every major military installation they possessed, appearing and disappearing like a ghost that could rewrite reality itself. "Status report," Zith demanded, his voice echoing through the massive chamber filled with holographic displays showing the remains of their once mighty fleet. "Sir, we've lost contact with 70% of our outer colonies," reported Intelligence Officer Crix, his scales pale with terror. "The Guardian has been hunting our forces for weeks. It doesn't just destroy our ships, it converts them into something else entirely." Zith's clawed hands gripped the command console until the metal bent. "Then we make our final stand here. Every ship in the Empire converges on Vorthak Prime. We throw everything we have at this thing." Across the Empire, the call went out. From every corner of Vorthak space, warships began arriving at their homeworld. Soon the space around Vorthak Prime was filled with over 10,000 vessels, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Then, without warning or flash of light, the Guardian simply appeared. It didn't emerge from hyperspace or tear through dimensional barriers this time. One moment the space above Vorthak Prime was empty. The next moment the Guardian was there, hanging in the void like a judgment from the gods themselves. Its biomechanical form had grown larger during its weeks of hunting, now easily the size of a small planet. "All ships, attack!" Zith screamed into his communicator. "Fire everything!" 10,000 Vorthak warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids, missiles that could penetrate any known armor, and exotic weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe all struck the Guardian at once. But the Guardian had evolved beyond anything the Vorthak could comprehend. It didn't block their attacks or deflect them. Instead, it simply existed in a way that made violence impossible. The energy beams that struck its hull were converted into gentle light that illuminated the darkness of space. Missiles became flowers that bloomed in the vacuum. Plasma cannons fired streams of water that would someday nourish life on barren worlds. "Sir, our weapons, they're not working," gasped Weapons Officer Vec, staring at his instruments in disbelief. "The entity is changing the nature of our attacks at the quantum level." The Guardian's response was equally impossible to understand. It reached out with tendrils of energy that passed through Vorthak's shields as if they were made of light. But instead of destroying the ships they touched, the Guardian began to transform them. Warships designed for conquest became mobile gardens, their hulls covered with growing plants and flowing water. Weapons systems converted into musical instruments that played haunting melodies across space. The feared Vorthak war machines became something beautiful and peaceful. "This is impossible," Zith roared, but his voice was already weakening. Around him, his own command center was changing. The walls sprouted flowers, the weapon controls became art displays, and the air filled with the scent of growing things. Captain Ji-un watched the final moments of the battle from Terra Base on Earth, her heart pounding as long-range sensors showed the incredible transformation taking place at Vorthak Prime. The most feared military force in the galaxy was becoming a cosmic garden, and she could hardly believe what she was seeing. "Captain, incoming transmission from Vorthak Prime," reported Communications Officer Sang-min, his voice filled with awe. The voice that came through the speakers was broken and defeated. "This is Supreme War Commander Zith of the Vorthak Dominion. We formally surrender to the Guardian of Earth. We yield to your power." The Guardian's response came, not just to Vorthak Prime, but to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Its voice was deep and patient, like the sound of eternity itself speaking. Earth protects. Earth remembers. Earth is eternal. On the human colony world of New Seoul, Governor Woo Jin stepped out of his administrative building and looked up at the stars. Around him, colonists were gathering in the streets, their faces filled with wonder and joy. Children who had been born light years from Earth and had never heard their origin stories were now singing songs about the blue world that had saved them all. "Is it true?" asked little Haewon, tugging on her father's coat. "Is Earth really our home?" "Yes, little one," Woo Jin replied, tears streaming down his face. "Earth is our home, and it never forgot about us." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on every human world. The Guardian had not just defeated humanity's enemies, it had given them back their identity, their purpose, and their connection to something greater than themselves. As the days passed, former enemies began approaching human colonies not with weapons but with offers of trade and friendship. The Guardian's power was so far beyond anything they could imagine that the very idea of fighting humanity seemed absurd. But the Guardian itself was ready to rest. Its great work was done, and its children were safe. Slowly, majestically, it began its journey back to Earth, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again doubt the power of humanity's protector. Dr. Min Ho stood on the shore of the Pacific Ocean, watching as the Guardian settled back into the depths from which it had emerged. The water around it glowed softly, and he could feel the ancient entity's presence like a warm heartbeat beneath the waves. As the Guardian disappeared beneath the surface, one final message reached every human in the galaxy. "I sleep, but I watch. You are never alone." Minho knelt by the water's edge and placed his hand on the warm surface. Somewhere far below, humanity's Guardian was returning to its long slumber, but the galaxy would never be the same. "Welcome home," he whispered to the ancient protector. "Thank you for remembering us." The stars continued to shine in the darkness, but now they shone on a galaxy where humanity knew its true strength, not in weapons or ships, but in the love of something ancient and patient that had waited 10,000 years to protect them. The end.